What happens when karma strikes someone who spent their life tearing others down? This story follows a racist landlord who has spent years humiliating and belittling his black tenant, a hard-working farmer. But the tables are about to turn in ways no one could ever expect. What begins as a brutal act of discrimination soon leads to a life-changing moment for the landlord, a lesson in humility he'll never forget. On a stormy night, a 10-year-old black boy walked home from his afternoon shift at the farm. The rain poured heavily, making it hard to see, and the road was slick with water. As he trudged along the sidewalk, the wind howled around him, but he remained focused on reaching home. Little did he know, his life was about to change forever. As he walked, a luxury car sped down the street, sliding recklessly on the wet asphalt. The driver, a middle-aged, affluent man, was too busy on his phone to notice the road conditions. The car suddenly swerved out of control, crashing into a tree with a violent thud. The car's engine smoked, and the boy froze for a moment, watching the wreckage. Then, without thinking, he dashed across the street. Despite the rain, the boy rushed toward the wrecked car, his heart pounding with adrenaline. The driver, the wealthy and arrogant landlord who had belittled him for years, was unconscious, slumped over in the driver's seat. The boy didn't hesitate. He pulled the man from the wreckage, his small hands working as quickly as possible to drag him to safety. The rain splattered against his face as he moved with urgency, his determination outweighing the danger of the situation. Once they were a safe distance away, the boy collapsed on the wet ground, panting heavily. The landlord was still unconscious, his body limp in the boy's arms. The boy looked down at the man who had constantly treated him as inferior. Despite the years of hurtful words and condescending actions, the boy didn't let any of it affect him. He had saved the landlord's life, and that was all that mattered. The boy's actions had proven that courage and kindness were more important than the hatred the landlord had carried for so long. The landlord slowly began to stir, his eyes blinking in confusion as he regained consciousness. He looked around, disoriented, then turned his gaze to the boy standing before him. For a brief moment, the boy saw the shock in the man's eyes as he realized who had saved him. The boy stood tall, his chest heaving, but he didn't seek any thanks or recognition. He didn't need it. His actions spoke louder than words. The boy turned and began walking back to the farm, not waiting for a thank you. He didn't need it. He had done what needed to be done. The landlord, still in shock, watched the boy walk away, his mind racing with confusion. How could the very boy he had belittled and treated poorly be the one to save his life? The irony wasn't lost on him, and in that moment he was forced to confront the deep-rooted prejudices that had governed his worldview for so long. The following days brought the story of the boy's bravery to the forefront of the small town. The landlord's accident became the talk of the town, but it wasn't just about the crash. It was about the boy's selflessness and courage in the face of danger. The landlord, who had spent so much of his life treating people like the boy with disdain, began to realize just how wrong he had been. His arrogance and prejudices had clouded his judgment, but now he saw the boy for what he truly was, a hero. The boy, on the other hand, returned to his life, unbothered by the newfound attention. He continued his work on the farm, still focused on helping his family. But now he carried himself with a new sense of pride, knowing that his actions had made a difference. The attention wasn't important to him. It was the change he had sparked in the landlord, and perhaps the entire town, that mattered most. The landlord, now humbled, was forced to confront the fact that the boy he had once disrespected had saved his life. This realization marked the beginning of a slow transformation for the man, who now found himself reflecting on the deeply ingrained biases that had shaped his entire life. The boy's actions had proven that kindness and bravery could overcome even the most entrenched hate, and it was a lesson the landlord would never forget. In the end, the boy's act of courage not only saved a life, but also shattered a lifetime of prejudice. It was a reminder that, no matter how deep the bias or hatred, one person's bravery could change everything. The boy had shown the world that true strength lies not in the ability to hurt others, but in the ability to lift them up, even in the face of adversity. And for that, he would always be remembered. The Black Farmer's Story: A Legacy of Perseverance. The black farmer, a descendant of generations of farmers, has spent his life working the land passed down through his family. Despite the hardships faced by people of color in the agricultural industry, he has always been determined to keep his family's farm alive. The farm is not just a place of work, it's a legacy, a symbol of resilience, and an enduring commitment to sustaining a livelihood through hard work and perseverance. Years of hard labor have shaped the farmer's character. He's accustomed to the long hours and physical demands of farm life. Yet, even though his back aches and his hands are worn from tilling the soil, he never complains. His father and grandfather instilled in him a sense of pride in the land, and despite systemic racism and barriers set against him, the farmer remains committed to working the land his family once owned. But in this era, maintaining the farm hasn't been easy. Recently, the farmer's life has been increasingly marked by financial challenges. The farm, once abundant and fruitful, has suffered from the unpredictable weather patterns, droughts, and poor crop yields. Crops have failed, and the farmer's debt to the bank has been mounting. Yet despite all these setbacks, he continues to push forward. He believes in the land, and he believes in his ability to overcome the challenges ahead. Even though it seems the odds are against him, he refuses to give up the fight. The weight of failure feels heavy, but so too does the weight of a proud legacy. He knows that if he can just make it through this tough period, better days will come. Every seed planted represents hope for a brighter future. His wife and children, though supportive, also feel the pressure of their circumstances. While they too share the dream of seeing the farm thrive again, they are also aware of the growing difficulties they face. The farmer often has to make hard decisions about the future, whether to take out more loans or whether to sell a piece of land to pay off debts. But selling the land feels like the last act of defeat, and the farmer refuses to consider it. The Landlord's Story: A Legacy of Privilege. In stark contrast, the landlord comes from a long line of wealthy landowners who have spent generations building their wealth through the exploitation of those less privileged. The landlord's wealth comes not from hard labor or ingenuity, but from a long history of keeping people like the farmer in poverty. The landlord inherited vast tracts of land and wealth from his ancestors, and in his mind, he is entitled to it all. He sees himself as superior to those who have had to work for their survival. The tenant farmers, especially black ones, are beneath him in his eyes, people to be controlled, kept down, and made to feel inferior. Systemic disdain. The landlord has grown up with a deep-seated belief in the natural superiority of those with wealth and the social standing it provides. He has rarely interacted with anyone who hasn't either been in awe of him or dependent on him. This sense of entitlement has led him to view the farmers on his land as tools to enrich him, rather than individuals with their own aspirations and dreams. He's known for making demeaning remarks, often publicly belittling the farmers. He mocks their inability to yield profits and considers their financial struggles as the result of their own incompetence, rather than recognizing the systemic racism and barriers that keep them from thriving. The landlord's prejudices are ingrained in him from years of upbringing in an environment that valued power and control over fairness or equality. He frequently mocks the black farmer, calling him unsuccessful and a man of failure. On numerous occasions he has walked past the farmer's land, scoffing at the lack of thriving crops, saying loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's no surprise this land's a mess. It's run by a man who will never succeed." The landlord's bitterness is rooted in his sense of invincibility, his wealth and status a shield against the challenges that the farmers face every day. His disdain for the farmer reflects the unchecked privileges and deep-seated racism that have helped shape his worldview. Despite these attitudes, the landlord enjoys the fruits of his ancestors' wealth, managing vast estates, collecting rents from tenants, and perpetuating a cycle of inequality that only serves to reinforce his belief in his superiority. Yet, as the farmer struggles to keep his land afloat, the landlord thrives, largely unaffected by the strife of those beneath him. The imbalance between the two men could not be more stark, and it is this divide that threatens to change everything for both of them. In many ways, the landlord's perspective on life is shaped by his belief that hard work is for others, not for someone born into privilege. He believes that he deserves all that he has, and anyone who doesn't have wealth or status must not be trying hard enough. This smugness, reinforced by his success, blinds him to the very real struggles of the people who make his wealth possible, like the farmer. The farmer walks up the long driveway to the landlord's estate, his boots sinking slightly into the mud with each step. His heart races, not from fear, but from the growing frustration of knowing that no matter how hard he works, it often feels like nothing is enough. The overdue payments on his rent hang heavily over him, and today he has no choice but to face the man who holds his future in his hands. His hands, calloused from years of labor, are clenched as he reaches the large, imposing doors of the landlord's home. As he enters the house, he's immediately greeted with an air of superiority. The landlord, sitting behind a polished desk in his pristine office, doesn't even stand to greet him. Instead, he waves a dismissive hand, his eyes barely looking up from the pile of paperwork in front of him. The farmer clears his throat, trying to get the landlord's attention, but the man simply ignores him, focused on his work. "Mr. McClure," the farmer begins, "I came to talk about the overdue rent. The crops haven't been good this season, and I've been doing everything I can." The landlord cuts him off with a sharp laugh. "Oh, here we go again. The hard luck excuse. You're always good for a sob story." His voice drips with condescension as he leans back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Maybe you should stop pretending to be a farmer and start working for real money, like everyone else." He chuckles, as if the suggestion is some great joke. "Farming's a poor man's trade. No wonder you're struggling." The words hit harder than the farmer expects. He's heard this kind of thing before, but the sting of the landlord's arrogance still cuts deep. The landlord leans forward, putting down his pen and locking eyes with the farmer. "You've had your chance. You're just not cut out for this. Maybe it's time you move on and stop wasting your time on something you'll never succeed at." The mockery continues, each word a punch to the gut. The farmer can feel his face flushing with anger and shame, but he doesn't let it show. He stands tall, even though every word from the landlord is meant to diminish him, to make him feel small and worthless. The landlord's words echo in the room, and for a moment, the farmer wonders how much longer he can endure this kind of treatment. The landlord stands up from his chair, walking over to a cabinet to pour himself a drink. "Honestly," he says with a sneer, "I don't know why I even bother with you. You're just a cog in the wheel, a guy who's too stupid to see the truth. You'll never be anything but a poor farmer, just like all the rest." He pauses for a moment, savoring his drink. "You should be grateful I even let you rent land from me. What do you think? You think I should be handing out charity?" The farmer stands there, fists clenched, heart pounding. He feels humiliated, his hopes crushed by the man who has so much power over him. But he knows he can't let this go on any longer. He's worked too hard for this, for his family, for his land. He opens his mouth to speak, but before he can, the landlord speaks again, this time louder and with a finality that chills him. "You'll be paying me, or I'll be kicking you off the land. Simple as that. Don't come back to me with more excuses." As the farmer takes a deep breath and prepares to leave, a strange calm settles over him. He has been belittled, disrespected, and humiliated, but he knows one thing for sure. He won't back down. With each step toward the door, he resolves that no matter how hard the road may get, he will keep working, because his worth is not defined by the landlord or anyone else. But just as he reaches the door, something unexpected happens. A loud crash shakes the room, followed by a deep, thunderous noise. The farmer's heart skips a beat as he turns back to see what's happening. The landlord, his back still turned, doesn't hear it. He's too busy pouring another drink. The farmer races toward the window, where he sees the landlord's prized luxury car crash into the guardrail, smoke billowing out of the front. For a brief moment, time seems to stand still. The farmer is frozen. Then, without thinking, he rushes out the door, ignoring the protestations from the staff who try to stop him. His mind is set. The man who had belittled him, humiliated him in front of his peers, is in danger. And, despite everything, the farmer knows he cannot turn his back on anyone in need, no matter the circumstances. As he gets to the car, he sees the landlord unconscious, the smoke growing thicker. Without hesitation, the boy pulls open the door, risks his own safety, and drags the man from the wreck. The fire burns at his back, but the boy doesn't stop until the landlord is safely on the ground, away from the danger. His chest heaves as he looks down at the man who had just moments ago mocked him. The crowd that had gathered stares, shocked, as the boy's bravery shines through. In this one moment, everything changes. The next morning, the community wakes up to shocking news. The once powerful landlord's entire real estate empire has collapsed. It didn't happen overnight, but the series of poor business decisions and a sharp downturn in the market culminated in the bank foreclosing on his estate. The very wealth that the landlord had used to belittle others, especially the farmer, had evaporated in an instant. His luxurious home, his expensive cars, and his privileged lifestyle were all slipping away, leaving him in financial ruin. Meanwhile, the farmer's life had begun to turn around in ways he never imagined. His determination and hard work had finally paid off. A lucrative business deal he'd worked tirelessly on came through, transforming his struggling farm into a profitable enterprise. The land that had once seemed like an insurmountable burden now became a thriving business. and with it came newfound respect from the community. The farmer's success wasn't just about the money. It was about proving his worth, not just to others, but to himself. Every setback he'd endured, every insult he had absorbed, led to this moment. The struggle was never easy, but he had kept going, determined to make something of his life. And now, his perseverance had paid off in the most rewarding way possible. As he sat in his newly renovated farmhouse, discussing the future with his family, a knock at the door interrupted the conversation. He stood, puzzled. Who could be visiting at this hour? When he opened the door, his eyes widened in disbelief. Standing in front of him was the landlord, the same man who had once humiliated him, who had mocked him for being unsuccessful and unfit for the life he was now living. The landlord's once confident posture was gone. His clothes, which had once been pristine, now looked disheveled and worn. The arrogance in his eyes had been replaced with desperation. I need your help," the landlord said, his voice unsteady. "I've lost everything. My estate is gone. I've been living in denial, thinking that I could keep everything afloat, but now I'm asking you, please, for help. I don't know what else to do." The farmer took a moment to process the scene before him. The man who had once treated him with so much disdain was now standing before him, humbled and pleading for assistance. The years of hurt, the countless insults, and the deeply ingrained prejudice were all flooding back. But the farmer had already made his decision. "You mocked me. You belittled my efforts, told me I wasn't good enough, that I'd never make it," the farmer said, his voice calm but firm. "But you see, this is where hard work and integrity lead, not to destruction, but to success. And I didn't need your help to get here. But now, it seems, you do." The landlord stood in silence, his head hanging low, too ashamed to speak. He knew the farmer was right. His life had been built on arrogance, on the belief that money and status could shield him from the consequences of his actions. But now he was paying the price for his ignorance and mistreatment of others. The farmer didn't offer his assistance that day. He didn't need to. He had already given the landlord something more valuable than money, a lesson in humility. And in the process, he had shown the world that no matter how many times you're knocked down, integrity and hard work will always lift you back up. As the landlord turned to leave defeated and humbled, the farmer watched him go. He had no desire to take advantage of the man's downfall. The farmer's journey had always been about proving his own worth, and now he knew that his success wasn't just about the financial gain. It was about standing tall in the face of adversity, never giving up on the values that mattered most. The twist of fate had been unexpected, but the outcome was clear. The farmer had emerged victorious, not just in business, but in life. The farmer stood firm as the landlord, now a shell of the man he once was, awaited a response. The weight of his arrogance, built over years of belittling and mistreating others, had finally come crashing down. The farmer took a deep breath and said, "I won't help you. Your actions have led to this moment. You're the one who built your world on the backs of others, and now it's your turn to face the consequences." The landlord's eyes were full of guilt, regret, and disbelief. The man who had once humiliated him was now standing tall in front of him, more successful and respected than he had ever been. The realization that he had mistreated the farmer who now held the power seemed to sink in. "Your karma has caught up with you," the farmer continued. "I've earned my place, and you need to do the same. I won't offer you charity or sympathy. but I will make sure others like me don't face the same hardships you've made me endure." With that, the farmer turned away, leaving the landlord standing on the doorstep. The farmer's words were a powerful reminder that actions have consequences, and the pride and arrogance of the past had no place in the future. The landlord left without a word, fully aware that this was a turning point in his life. The farmer, now financially secure, looked to the future with a clear vision. He knew that his success wasn't just for his own benefit. It was an opportunity to help others who had faced the same discrimination he had. With his newfound wealth, the farmer began to invest in programs that would support marginalized farmers in the community. He launched initiatives to help them gain access to resources, funding, and education, aiming to level the playing field and give them the same opportunities he had fought so hard to earn. Word of the farmer's generosity spread quickly. His story became a beacon of hope for many, showing them that despite the odds, success could be achieved through hard work and integrity. His farm wasn't just a symbol of personal achievement. It was a symbol of resilience, a representation of a community that refused to be held down by the oppressive forces of racism and inequality. As the farmer's influence grew, so did his impact on others. He became a mentor for young farmers, teaching them not only the skills needed to succeed in the agricultural industry, but also the importance of perseverance and fighting against systemic oppression. He shared his story, encouraging others to believe in themselves, despite the prejudices they might face. His story inspired others to push forward, even when the system seemed rigged against them. Meanwhile, the landlord, who had once been the embodiment of unchecked power, now had to reckon with the consequences of his actions. His wealth and influence had been built on a foundation of exploitation, and now he was left to pick up the pieces of his crumbling empire. The community, once fearful of his authority, began to question the system that allowed men like him to thrive while others suffered. The farmer's journey was far from over. His path was now one of advocacy, support, and change. But what had once seemed impossible, overcoming the systemic oppression and prejudice that had defined his life, was now a reality. The farmer had transformed from a victim of discrimination into a force for change, and through his resilience, he had become a leader, a symbol of hope for those who had been overlooked for far too long. His actions, his hard work, and his commitment to justice had forever changed not just his own life, but the lives of countless others. The landlord, once at the top of the social ladder, had been left to watch from the sidelines, learning too late that real power doesn't come from money or status. It comes from integrity, hard work, and the ability to lift others up. As the farmer walked through his land, he knew that this was just the beginning. He had created a legacy, one that would endure for generations to come. And with that, he continued to fight for a better, more equitable future. The farmer's success not only changed his life, but it also inspired the community around him. His victory against the forces of racism and prejudice became a symbol of resilience and perseverance. As he continued to expand his farm, he saw more and more people in the community rally behind him, offering support, advice, and encouragement. People who had once been skeptical of his success began to see him as a leader, a beacon of hope for all who had been oppressed and overlooked by society. The farmer's efforts weren't just limited to growing crops. His success allowed him to invest in local programs, support his fellow farmers, and give back to the community that had supported him. He created initiatives to provide resources and opportunities for marginalized farmers, ensuring that they, too, could achieve success through hard work and determination. The community began to prosper together, their bonds strengthened by the shared experience of overcoming adversity. Meanwhile, the landlord, who had once looked down on the farmer and mocked his efforts, now found himself destitute. His wealth had crumbled, and he was left with nothing but the wreckage of his past actions. He became a reminder of how racism and discrimination can have devastating consequences, even for the most powerful individuals. The same man who had once owned vast properties and exerted control over others now had nothing, while the farmer, once underestimated, stood tall in the face of adversity. The landlord's fall from grace became a cautionary tale for everyone who had once believed that power could protect them from their own flaws. The final scene takes place in the farmer's fields, where he stands tall, surveying the land he had worked so hard to cultivate. The crops, once struggling, now flourished under the farmer's care. The success he had achieved was a testament to his hard work, dignity, and unwavering belief in the power of perseverance. His fields had grown, just as he had. What had once seemed like an impossible dream, success, recognition, and respect, had been realized through years of determination and sacrifice. The farmer's gaze lingered on the horizon as he reflected on how far he had come. The insults from the landlord no longer had any weight. They were just distant memories of a time when others had tried to keep him down. His success spoke louder than any words ever could. It was a success built on integrity, hard work, and the knowledge that no matter how many people tried to put him down, he had the power to rise above. The world had changed for him. The farm had changed, and most importantly, the community had changed. What was once divided by prejudice and mistrust was now united by a shared vision of progress and equality. The farmer's victory was not just his own. It was the community's, the underdogs, the overlookeds, and it was a victory that would inspire others for generations to come. As the farmer stood in his fields, he knew that his work was far from over. He had broken barriers, and he was just getting started. His legacy would be built on more than just crops. It would be built on lifting others up, creating a future where respect and hard work were the true measures of success. Respect and hard work are the true currency of success, and no one can take that away, he thought, smiling as the wind carried the scent of his thriving crops into the air.